is back. Mr. Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Nadler. Thank you, Attorney General Garland, for your outstanding public service. My wife is a school board member. She has been targeted with deeply disturbing death threats. The lack of concern by my Republican colleagues for the safety of teachers, school officials, and school board members is dangerous, disgusting, and utterly shameful. Thank you, Attorney General Garland, for seeking to protect Americans from violence and threats of violence. I'd like to ask you some questions now about racial and ethnic profiling. She and others were wrongfully arrested by the Department of Justice, charged with alleged spying for China, and then months later, all their charges were dropped, but not after their lives were ruined and they incurred massive legal bills. As we looked into these cases, the only thing that was the same among all of them is that the defendants happen to look like me. They happen to be Asian American. In response, then Attorney General Loretta Lynch ordered implicit bias training for all her law enforcement agents and prosecutors at the Department of Justice. My question to you is, will you commit to implementing implicit bias training at the Department of Justice?
So I thank you for your comments. I know you know, I'm greatly attuned to this problem. That's why the very first memorandum I issued when I came to the Justice Department was to investigate hate crimes on a nationwide basis, and particularly against the AAPI community. That's why we have made all of the changes required by the No Hate Act, most of them before the act was even passed, because we were ready on that route. There's no excuse for this kind of discrimination, and it's the obligation of the Justice Department to protect people.
Thank you. So let me bring attention to a study that came out that shows that this problem is wider than we feared. It was conducted by a visiting scholar to the South Texas College of Law in the Committee of 100, a nonprofit. They analyzed economic espionage cases brought by the department between 1996 and 2020, and the findings are deeply disturbing. This study showed that 1 in 3 Asian Americans accused of espionage were falsely accused. It found that Asian defendants were punished twice as severely as non-Asian defendants. And it showed that the Department of Justice issued press releases much more frequently under these cases if the defendant happened to have an Asian name versus a Western name. So I'm going to ask you again, will you commit to implementing implicit bias training that then Attorney General Loretta Lynch had directed at the Department of Justice?
So my understanding is that that was required by the, I think, I can't remember the name, maybe the No Fear Act, I can't remember the name. And the bar on doing such training was rescinded by the president in an executive order, I think on the very first day of the new administration. And so, of course, we will go ahead with what was required by the statute, including implicit bias training, yes.
So if you could look into that more, I appreciate it. So thank you. I'd like to now talk about a case brought under the China Initiative that happened under your watch. The case of Professor Aming Hu, who was also wrongfully accused of spying for China. The evidence against him was so flimsy that a federal judge dismissed the case on a Rule 29 motion. I'm a former prosecutor. I know that those motions are rarely, if ever, granted. The judge found that even viewing all the evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecution, no rational jury could conclude that the defendant violated the law. If we look at one of the darkest periods of our nation's history, over 100,000 Americans who happen to be of Japanese descent were interned because our government could not figure out the difference between the Imperial Army of Japan and Americans who happen to be of Japanese descent. I'm asking the department not to repeat that similar type of mistake, and I'm asking you if you will look into the China Initiative to make sure it's not putting undue pressure on the department to wrongfully target people of Asian descent.
Internment of Japanese American. It's a terrible stain on American people and on the American government, on American history. I can assure you that kind of racist behavior will not be repeated. There is a new Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division who is pending confirmation. I'm sure that when he is confirmed, which hopefully will be in the next few days, maybe in the next few weeks, we'll review all of the activities in the department, in his division, and make a determination of which cases to pursue and which ones not. I can assure you that cases will not be pursued based on discrimination, but only on facts justifying them.
The time of the gentleman has expired, Mr. Benz.
Mr. Chair, may I ask unanimous consent to enter 3 documents into the record?
Without objection.
Okay, the first is a study I referenced called Racial Disparities in Economic Espionage Act Prosecutions, a window into a new Red Scare, dated September 21st, 2021. The second is an article entitled Professor Acquittal, Is China Initiative Out of Control, dated September 25th, 2021. And the final document is a letter from 177 Stanford faculty members outlining why the China Initiative is discriminatory and harms American competitiveness, dated September 8th, 2021. Thank you.
Without objection, the gentleman yields back. Mr. Benz.
Thank you, Mr.